Good morning. I'd like to again welcome you to the Anoka County Chapter Policy Breakfast. I'm Sue Watlow Phillips, and I am the Executive Director of MICAH and the President of the National Coalition for the Homeless. I've had the honor to serve God over the last 54 years in a number of different positions and volunteer, working with people experiencing homelessness and housing crisis to make sure that they have a place to call home. MICAH is the Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing. We started in 1988, and I was one of the founding board members. And we were founded by people of diverse faiths who came together to address the growing numbers of people experiencing homelessness. Our mission is to ensure that everyone, without exception, has a safe, decent, accessible, and affordable home that is affordable for them at their income. We are a welcoming community where we love and treat others as ourselves. Our members are congregations and organizations and individuals that are addressing the immediate needs of people in our community, including prevention, services, outreach, food, shelter, transitional and supportive housing, and affordable rental and home ownership opportunities. We work together at the national, state, and local level to address the systemic causes of homelessness and racism, and through policy changes and the use of our resources to prevent homelessness and assist people to address their immediate needs and support affordable housing developments in our community. Our work is based on our faith and listening to and working with people who have experienced homelessness and or a housing crisis in developing those solutions that meet their needs by using their voice and power at every decision-making table. 70% of MICAH's board are people from diverse communities. Over half of our board are folks that have experienced homelessness or housing crises or discrimination, including myself. I experienced homelessness as a teenager when I was competing in sports at the University of Minnesota. I got hurt and I was unable to continue to work at my job loading semis at UPS. And so I could no longer afford my apartment. So I ended up moving back home here to my home in Fridley, which I grew up in and now have lived in for almost 68 years. We organize in regional chapters with MICAH. Each chapter meets monthly or more often by Zoom. The MICAH Northeast chapter is Washington and suburban Ramsey County. We have a MICAH St. Paul chapter. We have a MICAH Housing for All, which is Hennepin County. MICAH Minneapolis, which includes the Blue Line Coalition, Freedom from the Streets, No More Streets, and the African Immigrants Lake Council. MICAH South, which is our Dakota County, and of course, our MICAH Anoka County chapter. And I want to give a special thank you to Sue Baisden, who is one of our MICAH board members, who has just been an incredible inspiration in restarting the Anoka County chapter, and her leadership and coordination of our monthly meetings and helping to pull this event together. So thank you very much, Sue, for all your great work. It is now my honor to introduce Natividad, our host for the event. We are honored to have Natividad as a new MICAH board member, and she also was a Community Hero Award winner with MICAH. She also is the president of Park Plaza Cooperative, a resident-owned manufactured home community in Fridley, just up the street from my house, and vice president of APAC, All Parks Alliance for Change. Natividad?
Welcome, everybody, and thank you so very much for joining us today. It's great to see some old faces and a bunch of new faces that I have not met before. So again, thank you so much for being here bright and early in the morning. So we are here today to join together to talk about quite a few different things that are really important to so many in our state. Today, you will hear from our policymakers and community members as we work together to utilize our resources to prevent homelessness, strengthen our continuum to housing, and ensure everyone without exception has a safe and decent, accessible home that is affordable for them at their income level. Right now, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Pastor Christina as she leads us in offering of a faith reflection.
Thanks, Natividad. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pastor Christina Hill, and I serve at Cross of Hope Lutheran Church in Ramsey. I'm grateful to be a part of the Anoka County chapter of MICAH. And I'm just so thrilled to be here this morning.
10, 11. I'm so sorry for the interruption. Steph. Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Thank you. So my kids have been really into Spider-Man lately. and I am just thrilled about it. So we recently sat down to watch the 2002 Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire. And my oldest son has since been slinging webs all over the house and repeating Uncle Ben's iconic line from that movie, "With great power comes great responsibility." Now, this line has always struck me just as it struck Peter Parker and inspired him to a life of heroism. But now I'm realizing that Uncle Ben's wisdom echoes the teachings of Jesus, who in Luke chapter 12 urged his disciples to use their God-given gifts and talents for good. So Jesus tells them, "From everyone to whom much has been given, much will be required. And from the one to whom much has been entrusted, even more will be demanded." This morning, we remember that we have all been given so much: skills, knowledge, connections, resources, and the power now to enact change. So we have the responsibility to use these gifts in service to our neighbors. If we have more than we need, we're called to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and provide shelter for the houseless. If we have the authority, we're called to speak up for the lowly, to lift up the poor and the oppressed, and to reorder society, to eliminate systemic injustice. This is our core verse at Micah 6:8, that says, "We must do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God." And with all the power that we have in our hearts, we're called to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, to love even our enemies, and to work together in community for the sake of the world God loves. In our session this morning, may God awaken in us our great power and our great responsibility for the sake of the great love we find in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you,
Amen.
Christina. That's wonderful.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to share my screen again here.
Mhm.
And we are going to go to our next slide. And on this slide, you can see that we have 29,091 households in Anoka County that are cost burdened. And what that means is folks are paying more than 30% of their income for housing. 11,126 renters and 17,965 owners. And so what people are doing when they pay more than 30% of their income for housing is they're always trying to balance, do I have enough money for food, for utilities, for clothing, to take care of the different needs or an emergency that may come up. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that these are the types of jobs that we're creating in the metro area. And that many of those jobs, I was just letting somebody in and jumped right over to the next screen. Many of those jobs do not pay enough for people to afford a 2-bedroom unit. And many of those jobs do not pay enough for people to be able to get into home ownership. So a person working a minimum wage job in the metro area has to work 75 hours each week to be able to afford a 1-bedroom unit. So this is really critical. So as we're talking today, and we're going to have different policymakers talking, we want to talk about how we can use the $69 million that we have in American Rescue Plan dollars here in Anoka County, the $1.15 billion we still have left in American Rescue Plan on the state level, and the $7.7 billion in what is sometimes called surplus dollars that we have at the state level. But at MICAH, we believe that there is no surplus as long as we have people that are hungry, homeless, at risk of being evicted, not stably housed, and not having their basic needs met. So I'm going to turn it back over to Navidad, and she's going to introduce she's going to recognize our policymakers that are here today.
Okay, thank you, Sue. That's some great information. And much to my surprise, how many are renters versus owners in Anoka County. So welcome to our policy officials today. We are very thankful that you have been able to get up so early and make it with us today. So we have Mandy Meisner, our Anoka County Commissioner, State Representative Connie Bernardy, and State Representative Sandra Feist. Is that how you say your last name? I'm not sure. Sorry.
That's right. Feist.
Great. And thank you. State Senator Jim Alberg. Is that how you say that?
Abler.
I should just say your first names and just call it a day. And also a staff member from Senator Tina Smith's office, Ben. So welcome up to all of you, and we thank you again. And right now, we would like to ask our two speakers, Mandy Meisner and Connie Bernardy, to take over. So Mandy, if you would like to go first, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Well, no pressure. First speaker up for the day. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much. It is a real privilege to be here this morning. I'm here, of course, to share some of the plans and vision that Anoka County has, but honestly, I'm mostly here to listen. MICAH is an organization I am not super familiar with, so this is great to see so many attendees and to hear. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit personally and then kind of go into the nuts and bolts a little bit of Anoka County and hopefully have a great discussion with Connie and any of the other reps as well. I really like having discussion versus like I'm talking to people. So I do invite anybody to jump in at any time. So my name is Mandy Meisner. I am serving I'm just ending the first year of my first last year of my first term as an Anoka County Commissioner. But before that, my background is community service. So this is the first time I have ever been in office. And so for me, community service, I really care about my backyard. And I was really investing a lot in our nonprofit areas, including housing. So for me, the most familiar agencies before I became a commissioner, which is in my own backyard, were Stepping Stone Emergency Housing, Hope for Youth, Family Promise, and then some of the programming through the Y. Since becoming a commissioner, I've really taken advantage of the fact that I can now learn and educate myself even further about homelessness. So at Anoka County, we have something called Anoka County Heading Home Collaborative, which is a huge collaborative of a bunch of different community stakeholders, all working towards ending homelessness. And so I don't attend all of those meetings, but I do pretty regularly, again, mostly just to listen and hear what other folks are doing as far as programming. So when I'm out in the community, I can offer resources or direct people. The most recent thing that Anoka County has been part of was PIT, right? So Point in Time. This is a HUD initiative where you go out in the community, and for one day you are collecting data of who is homeless in your community. I don't want to say the easy part, but one of the easier parts of collecting that data, of course, are the people who are already in shelters. PIT is really kind of focused then on going out into the community and finding people who don't have a place to sleep. So just my leadership style, I was lucky enough to partner with some staff at Guild, and I was actually outside. I wish they would change that date of January 26th. It's not an accurate count. But was able to be out in the field and see what that looked like. As a policymaker, as a county commissioner, my personal and professional philosophy is, I can be really well-intended of setting policy, but if I don't actually know the community that they serve, it's not a good policy, right? So the further I can get boots on the ground is kind of where my heart is. And I think that's the best way that I can make good policy. So for Anoka County, so Sue mentioned that, yes, we have as Anoka County, the total chunk of about $69 million worth of ARPA funds. And so we have the job then to figure out how to allocate that, how to shape that. We have up through 2026 to spend it. So this is significantly different than our CARES Act dollars. Anoka County got $34 million of CARES, but that was like a super quick turnaround. We had really no time of planning. So this is meted out in a much better way because we can really take our time to look at things. So for Anoka County, we've got several different buckets of funding too. So that $69 million is that total that Anoka County has. Now, we also are part of the Home Investment Partnership Program, and that is through HUD. We also have allocated $2.4 million into that bucket. So at this time, the plan is we're going to take that $2.4 million. Oh, and this is a little bit different as well. So this bucket of money of the home funding, we actually have till 30 to spend it. So we have even more time to figure out a project and a plan and what's going to make the most sense. But we are combining 2.4 million of that bucket of the home funding. And then we are allocating an additional 2 million. So a total of 4.4 million is going to be dedicated towards homelessness, transitional housing, renters assistance. So we're very early on in the stages. So right now we are literally in the very first process of talking to the community. But even that stage is going to take several layers of doing. First, we have to identify like who is the community. I know that sounds kind of like a silly thing, like, well, you're going to talk to, the shelters and things like that. Yes, that is true. But there's a large variety of what is the criteria that we can help. So it is about homelessness, domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, human trafficking. So all of these things fit in, and in my opinion too, Sue talked a little bit about this. I mean, mental health is huge. If you don't have the money to pay your bills and you're really struggling financially, you do have to constantly choose, am I going to fix my car, put gas in my car? Am I going to buy food? So, for us, there's a larger expanse of who we should be asking. So in my opinion, should be the food shelters as well. So people who are experiencing food insecurity probably are also struggling with renting or home owning and that kind of thing. So really taking a wide net. So once we get people at the table, then we will have a formal needs assessment, figuring out, like, really tell us your input. And then once we gather all that information, we will kind of decide on a project. I can say now, please do not hold me to this because this is so early in the stages. And so I really don't want to mislead anybody. Anything I say today, of course, is what our plan is today, and it is my hope that it will evolve, right? So as we figure out and get more data and really get boots on the ground, that will probably change, which is a good thing. I can say right now that what we have been hearing is a big need with a family emergency shelter. So as you guys know, there is none. There is none in Anoka County. So Stepping Stone is the closest thing to emergency shelter. They have 66 bed count. Any day of the week, they have anywhere from 150 to a 200 waiting list. And that is really not an emergency shelter in terms of I don't have a place to sleep. They're about holistic wraparound services to get people back on their feet. So their program is a little bit different. Family Promise, that is more emergency, but they're pretty limited as well. And they do have accept families, but we really do not have a family emergency shelter. So on this first kind of go around, that is kind of what we're hearing about. The other thing that I can tell you, which will be great for this group, we are not interested as a county to actually buy a building ourselves and run the programming. So what we want to do is partner with people who are already doing the work that need our help. So whether that's a capital support, with a building or renovation, and then they do the programming. But that's definitely something I know that we're looking towards versus, I mean, we could have the option of buying a building and then running it. But at this time, that's just really not in our plans. Let's see. I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. I know I have like 7 minutes, but I don't know. First of all, does anyone have any questions or comments? I mean, because I'm listening, so I'm going to be taking notes and bringing them back to Karen and bringing them back to the board in terms of what I learned about this morning. I see a hand
Janelle.
up. Oh.
Janelle has a question.
Yeah, I know you don't know me very well. I know some people that do know me very well because I've been on the boots on the ground. I've been homeless. I've been homeless. I'm on the verge of homelessness. I don't want to go back to homelessness just because of the way things are going right now. I don't live in your county, but we have a group called Freedom from the Streets and No More Streets. And we are in Ramsey County, in Hennepin County. We are small people, but we are trying to go be all over to help out because the simple fact is some people put people in positions, and it doesn't work. We are at the stage now where we have group, like today we have group today in St. Paul. This Friday we have group in St. Paul at in the library, at Randall's library, and a lot of things that we're hearing is, who's hiring these people? And like, I really would love to get into somewhere where I can show people what I can do. I mean, what our group can do, because we have ran. I know Powderhorn wasn't the best, but the West Side, if you know the West Side Powderhorn, was better than the East Side. I ran about 400 some people. I mean, it was a lot of people there.
Okay, you put yourself back on mute there, but I thank you so much for your comments too, because I mean, actually, this is really timely. I mentioned that for myself, I went out in the field with the point in time count for the homeless, and the person that I was partnered with was amazing. And she taught me so much. And she actually was very specific about the things that you are just talking about right now, that within social work, just like anything, there's people that have innate abilities for one area and a different one, but for street outreach, that you have to have the right people or you're not going to connect. And I was lucky. So I was able to see this woman who was extremely talented. But I promise you, if there was somebody who wasn't as good with meeting people where they are at, she would have not made those connections. She would have not gotten that information, and she would not be able to follow up with them then the next day or 2 days later. So I appreciate that, because that's something that I don't think is talked enough about either, because, I mean, it's just so deep in the system in terms of what kind of talent is out there for street outreach. So I wrote down the freedom from the streets. I will follow up with you, because yes, I would be very interested to learn. And then the other thing too, with Anoka County, we literally just hired, or just approved to hire, I don't know if we've hired them quite yet, 2 street outreach folks for Anoka County, which I want to say, if it's not the first time, it has been a very long time since Anoka County ourselves have been able to have that resource. And it is so needed. I mean, Anoka County, I think a lot of people have the misconception that we're kind of rural or not very big. Anoka County is the 4th largest county in the state. There are 87 counties, and we are absolutely a metro county. I should have started. So I represent the most diverse and urban part of the county. I am Fridley, Columbia Heights, Hilltop, and part of Spring Lake Park. So a lot of these issues I take to heart, and it's just a lot more prominent in my area than in other commissioners' districts. So this is something that I just feel super passionate about. But thank you so much for your comments. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mandy. We're going to go over to Representative Bernardy. So, and then we'll have more time for questions.
Okay, thank you.
Later too. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's so great to see everyone on our Zoom meeting today. It is an honor to represent our community in Anoka County, and I also represent New Brighton as well. The communities are part of Spring Lake Park, part of New Brighton, and all of Fridley. And Natividad and Sue, thank you for your leadership in this area. I've been working and partnering with you for many years now. I'm starting my 16th year in the Minnesota House of Representatives, and I serve as the Education, Finance, and Policy Chair, as well as serve on the Ways and Means Committee, which all the finance bills go through the Ways and Means before they hit the House floor. So that is a great perspective to be able to provide that kind of leadership to our community and what we finance. And then the other area is Transportation Policy and Finance Committee. I grew up in Anoka County in Columbia Heights on 4th Street, and then we moved to Fridley on 4th Street. Imagine that, and spent about 5 decades in Anoka County. So it is truly an honor to be able to call it home, my hometown, and to be able to help work on housing for all of our residents. It is the most critical thing, I believe, working on the Ways and Means Committee, everything that goes through our committee, it really starts with the foundation of being able to have a place to call home, to be able to wake up in the morning and to go to bed at night and to feel safe and comfortable. And so I want to thank everyone on this call, and I know in Zoom, I should say, and I know a number of you and those that I don't, I look forward to the opportunity to getting to know you and want to thank you for your leadership in this very, very important area for our community. So every Minnesotan deserves a safe place to call home where they can start and end their day, as I said earlier. Have a safe and secure place is critical to Minnesota's health, economic security, and opportunities for achievement. Stable housing is the foundation of all of our success. Minnesota has one of the nation's highest rates of home ownership, but also one of the largest ownership disparities between white and Black, Indigenous, people of color households. We need housing investments that will help us to close that gap and allow more Minnesotans to purchase homes and put down their roots. This past year, we have a bipartisan legislature, and we passed a number of things that will help residents in our community. And I just want to name a few of those, and I won't belabor them, and then talk about what was left on the table that we have the opportunity to look forward to in trying to get passed. And so the last session, eviction moratorium off-ramp, $100 million in housing infrastructure bonds, prorated rent requirements, service animal accommodation clarifications, manufactured home titling reform, which was one of my bills, and shelter task force, one-time funding increase for housing programs. And the things that were left on the table that we as DFLers really want to get passed and will continue to work towards that is eviction reforms and tenant protections. And bills in that, it was like an act and a big bill, and it talks about pre-eviction notice requirements, expanded eligibility for eviction expungement, eviction court reform, right to counsel and public housing evictions, minimum heat requirements, expansion of statutorily defined emergency repairs, landlord entry 24-hour notice requirement, ban on optional fees, allowing tenants to break their lease with proper notice when they need to move into a medical treatment facility, and providing manufactured home park residents an opportunity to purchase their park if it goes up for sale. Natividad and I are working on that really hard in a whole spectrum of manufactured home community opportunities to really people lay down their roots and own the land that they live on and to take care of their homes. So those are the things that we still are some of the things that we still need to move forward with. And the most important part, and as Mandy talked about listening and having a discussion, is that we need to listen to Minnesotans and address the core economic stressors in their lives, including most families' number one expense, the cost of housing. Minnesota's faced a housing crisis before the pandemic that has only worsened. We have a golden opportunity this session to invest in solutions that create more housing options, which in turn create more economic opportunities for families, business, and our state's future. Minnesota faced a housing crisis long before the global pandemic. And since then, the need to have a safe and secure place to call home has been shown to not only be crucial for the individual, but a key component in public health. We can't expect Minnesotans to safely isolate or be productive from home when they face housing insecurity, which is why House DFLers are putting forward proposals for safe and affordable housing. President Biden and congressional Democrats stepped up and delivered significant rental assistance for Minnesota families that has been available through Rent Help Min. This, combined with our eviction moratorium, has helped tens of thousands of Minnesotans keep their head above water and weather those economic storms. But let's be clear, the storm is not over. With urgency, the governor, House, and Senate ought to work together to provide assistance to renters and do everything in their power to ensure stability for Minnesota landowners and renters. I am glad that the governor has included these following housing proposals in his budget plan. $95 million over 3 years in emergency shelter service to improve and expand overnight emergency shelter options for individuals and families experiencing homelessness throughout Minnesota. The budget enhances support for Minnesota youth and young adults, including LGBTQ+ youth experiencing homelessness with prevention services, housing units, and targeted service for young parents. The budget proposal also provides additional grant funding to support Minnesota families experiencing and transitioning out of homelessness. $100 million to preserve and improve existing housing, $12 million in in fiscal year 2023, and $20 million in fiscal year 2024-25 for additional down payment and closing cost assistance, $19.5 million in fiscal year 2023, and an increase of $19 million in fiscal year 2024-25 to the Family Homelessness Prevention and Assistance Program, $1.1 million for the MDVA Homes for Veterans Program, creating additional incentives provided to landlords who are renting units to veterans experiencing homelessness. And finally, $8.8 million to establish permanent supportive housing plans for Minnesota veterans. The budget also includes funding for the hotel and outreach program for Minnesota veterans, reducing chronic and long-term homelessness and disparities within the response system. And then I will touch on the package of affordable housing and really important housing in our community. And I've been working closely with Natividad on this legislation. And so from my notes, I will just share with you, we are getting this, it's been drafted and it's being introduced. We are developing a new pilot program for Minnesota manufacturing housing pilot lending competitive financing. And then we'll continue to get that opportunity to purchase so to become a co-op like Park Plaza. One of the leaders in the state, Natividad, is a rock star in working on housing issues. And this is, if you just think about if you own a home, you don't have to think about whether or not you're going to have the land to continue to live on underneath your home. And we need to make the playing field level and make sure that we can help our residents stay in their housing. And then $5 million down payment assistance, another $2 million for rehab to preserve our existing homes. And then $5 million for loan loss preserve funds for financing, and $10 million for lenders serving unmet needs. So this is, we have a lot of work cut out for us, but we have a bipartisan group of people at the legislature who are working together. And we met at Park Plaza this past year, and we got to meet together and do a tour of the park. And it is truly an honor. I went to Woodcrest Elementary School, and my friends lived in Park Plaza and the other other homes around that area. And we need to do all we can to make sure that we have stable housing where people can root their families and be able to stay in our communities. And I want to thank all of you on this call today for your leadership, your advocacy, and know that your voice does make a difference, because the legislature responds to what they're hearing from the public, and you sharing your voices, not only for the needs of people around you, but for the needs of all of the people in our community and our state, is critical. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Connie. And we're going to take some more questions in a little bit. I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go to our next presentations. Natividad?
got off track for a second. I'm trying to hold back tears. Everybody's such great supporters, have become great supporters of manufactured housing in our state. So it's been a wonderful 12 years of being the president for Park Plaza Cooperative. It means a ton to us, and we have so much more to do to keep people in their homes here. Not just in a co-op, but manufactured housing across the board, because they don't talk about us very often. So I think that's really important. And thank you, Connie, so much for advocating for this current bill that we're working on together. So I thank you a whole bunch. So right now we have our panelists who are our Pastor Christina, Kayla of Hope for Youth, Lisa from the YMCA Youth and Family Services, Teresa from Family Promise, and Margaret from the Twin Cities Housing Development. So Christina, if you would like to take it away, we are good to go.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you all for being here today. I'm so happy to have this opportunity. Like I said, my name is Pastor Christina Hill, and I serve at Cross of Hope Lutheran Church in Ramsey. Previously, I've served for 5 years at Glencarry Lutheran Church in Ham Lake, which is located right next to the low-income Ham Lake apartments. So we did a lot of ministry with them. And as you'd imagine, being in the church, we get a lot of requests from the community for help paying for food, gas, and rent. And our volunteers work alongside all of these community partners joining us today, including Family Promise and Stepping Stone Emergency Housing. But I wanted to share a story that happened this past November. A houseless individual was found to be living in our cemetery in his truck. Literally, he had nowhere to go, and he chose this literal place of death as a place to park and live. So members of our church tried to bring him some resources, gloves, gift cards for lunch, but he only came by at night to sleep, and our efforts were just woefully inadequate to help this person. Later, some of our neighbors ended up calling the police on him, and the police came by and evicted him from our private property. Ironically, it was in the midst of our Sunday morning worship service when we were worshiping God, who calls us to serve the poor and oppressed. So this really troubling incident sparked conversation among our congregation about what we are doing for houseless folks who are literally in our backyard here in Anoka County, despite the great affluence that we enjoy. Cross of Hope is involved in serving our community and providing resources to people in need, including delivering firewood and supplies down to tent encampments, giving gas and grocery cards, making and serving meals for Stepping Stone, volunteering with Family Promise, and creating blessing bags, which we pack and hand out to houseless individuals. And we are currently brainstorming our next steps for outreach, including the determining use for unfinished space on our property and an unfinished commercial kitchen. Now, these efforts are very important and they're transformational, but they are not enough. There has been a recent ask from the Heading Home Anoka Housing Collaborative that churches become warming sites for houseless individuals during this bitterly cold winter. And frankly, this is a great idea. I love it. And it is in line with our Christian mission, but it disregards the larger infrastructure needs that our county has the resources and the responsibility to provide. It's 2 degrees outside this morning. We need 24-hour warming shelters with trained staff, not well-meaning church ladies, as wonderful as they are. We need someplace that we can entrust our friend from the cemetery, someone that we can call for help instead of calling the police. We need shelter for families with children, as Commissioner Meisner noted, a resource that is sorely lacking in Anoka County. I was shocked to hear that there's 150 to 200 people on the waiting list at Stepping Stone. That's 200 people without a place to go. And frankly, that is not okay. These are immediate needs. They're not things that can wait for 5 years as we plan. We can't wait until the 2026, 2030 deadlines to use these funds. We need action today. We ask that you support MICAH's and Homes for All's legislative agenda, that you would use the American Rescue Plan funds and Minnesota surplus funds to strengthen the continuum to housing, including prevention, outreach, warming sites, shelters, transitional housing, supportive housing, rent subsidies, and affordable housing for people with incomes under 30% of the median income. We ask that rent policies change to make housing more acceptable to people with poor credit histories, criminal backgrounds, substance abuse, and mental health concerns. Because having the basic necessities of life, including safe and reliable shelter, is a step towards a healthy and hopeful future for these individuals and will ultimately lead to a healthier and happier community. Everybody wins. In Anoka County and in the state of Minnesota, we have the resources to make this happen. We have the power to create real change for our community, and therefore we have the responsibility to do these things and to make housing affordable and accessible to all people. As elected officials in our community, I know you represent us, the people, and you're responsible for our best interests. So I urge you to seriously consider these policy issues. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but to ensure that these cold and suffering individuals, their stories are being heard and acted upon. I hope and pray that we can all work together as government officials, nonprofits, and communities of faith to make this vision a reality. Thank you.
Thanks, Pastor Christina. And we'll go over to Kayla.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Kayla Flanagan. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak on behalf of Hope for Youth. My journey with Hope for Youth started in about 6 years ago. I've been a client there since the age of 18. I became homeless after my family home was foreclosed. I started utilizing services at the drop-in center, like the food shelf, shower, meal, clothing closet. I was living in my car at the time, and Hope for Youth helped me get into Hope Place, which is their transitional housing program. It's a 12-apartment program that has studio apartments for youth in situations like mine. We have access to doing free laundry there. We could go on computers, get some help with the case manager, whether that was applying for a job, getting resources for gas, food, things like that. At Hope Place, we also had a gym that we could go work out in, kind of work on not only our physical health, but also our mental health. We also had a garden where we could go outside and just like find peace and grow our own vegetables, which was fun. I moved into Hope Place in December of 2017. And the night that I moved in was my first night sleeping in a bed in almost a year. Living at Hope Place helped me gain confidence in independent living skills, helped me gain confidence in housekeeping and hygiene, keeping up on hygiene. Hope Place gave me a sense of community, reminded me that I was not alone. There are people my age in situations like mine. Hope Place helped me get stable housing. I have now been in an apartment for 2 years with a friend that I met from Hope Place. One thing I really appreciate about Hope for Youth is that even after we secure housing, they're still here to help us. In the last year, Hope for Youth paid my security deposit and my first month's rent when my roommate and I moved into our apartment. In the last year, Hope Place has gone Hope for Youth has gone above and beyond to help me and so many other youth that walk through their door. Last winter, our heat went out in our apartment, and Hope for Youth dropped everything and offered to get a hotel for my roommate and I just so we could have somewhere warm to stay. My car broke down in the parking lot of the drop-in center in Anoka at Hope for Youth. And the case managers came out and were able to help me. Were able to coordinate me getting a tow, get my car towed. I had 24 cents in my account at the time that my car broke down. And Hope for Youth was able to assist me with the repair costs of my vehicle. They also gave out an Uber card to ensure that I'd be able to come back if I needed services while my car was being repaired. One of the other services they offer at the Hope for Youth Drop-In Center is case management. And the case managers at the Drop-In Center have changed my life. They're there to assist with housing, employment, budgeting, mental health, and finding resources. They can assist with chemical health, help getting you help for really anything. And the case managers go above and beyond to personalize their approach for every youth that they work with. So discussing like the current rent situation. So my current rent for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom is $1,175. I currently make $15.95 an hour, which means that I get about $700 to $800 twice a week. That very, very closely makes things difficult with paying rent. Some ways that the drop-in center could use some help. It would be very beneficial if the Hope for Youth Drop-in Center was handicap accessible. Some of these services we have upstairs, and so youth that have physical limitations aren't able to access everything in the same way. And private meeting spaces. It's very difficult to have that confidential and hard conversation with a case manager, especially coming in, getting services for the first time. And so that's been a limitation, is not having that private space. But again, Hope for Youth has been life-changing. They've done so much to help every youth that walks through their door. So thank you for giving me the chance to speak on behalf of them again. And I'm excited to see what work comes out of this.
Thank you so much, Kayla. And we'll go to Lisa.
Sue, Mandy has a question.
Sorry, I was just clapping.
Oh, okay.
So let's go to Lisa then.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Lisa from the YMCA. Thank you, Kayla, for sharing your story. We are also a youth provider at the YMCA, and we partner very closely with Hope for Youth in all different respects. It clearly takes more than just one provider to serve a community, and youth are very much, there's a lot of young people experiencing homelessness that are under the age of 25 in Anoka County, and they don't stay in Anoka County. They also travel to where the resources are. So I just wanted to touch on the fact that somebody else brought up earlier is the desperate need for shelter in Anoka County. Clearly, maybe it was Mandy that brought up the numbers, but when you look at other counties, in Anoka, I just learned, being the 4th largest in the state, there's youth shelters in Ramsey County. There's youth shelters in Hennepin County. There's no youth shelter in Anoka County. Along with the need for family shelter, young people need to be recognized as well to get the youth-specific services that they need. So Stepping Stone is the only place to refer young people experiencing homelessness in Anoka County. And our outreach team has placed people as far away as Carver County just to find shelter. So think about that. If all your ties are on the north end of the metro and the only place you can get in is down in Chanhassen, something is clearly needs to be addressed in that retrospect. So we decided at the YMCA when COVID happened to take advantage of some emergency sheltering money and start sheltering young people in hotels, as many other agencies did. We piloted this idea, and it evolved into a program, and we ran that program for a year, strictly sheltering young people who are experiencing homelessness in Anoka County between the ages of 18 and 24. They could be parenting or not. And we served 41 people in that program. We have 4 more in-house still, and looking at getting them moved into permanent housing. Over half of them moved into permanent stable housing. So it does work, just as Kayla had talked about. So when you make the connections through outreach, you get services and basic needs met, you have shelter, it's a continuum. And we know that if we can end youth homelessness, we can tackle the whole overall homelessness piece. So we can if we end youth homelessness, eventually we can eradicate it completely. So, and I just wanted to bring up one other idea is there is a hotel for sale in Anoka County. So, and just at a drop of a few $1 million, we could shelter a lot of people in individual rooms and not in congregate spaces. And there's a lot of wisdom here in this call and throughout the county to provide services to make sure people transition to permanent stable housing. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Lisa. And we have been buying up homes with the American hotels and motels with the American Rescue Plan dollars in Dakota County, and Hennepin. Ramsey County is also looking at that. We're also looking at in Washington County. So Mike has been working with that and would love to do that in Anoka County also with the American Rescue Plan dollars. So thanks so much for bringing that up, Lisa. And then we'll go to Teresa.
Good Morning, everybody. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning, and to Sue Baisden for inviting me to chat with you all. My name is Teresa, and I currently sit on the board for Family Promise in Anoka County. I began my journey with Family Promise in 2015 when I was a junior in high school experiencing homelessness with my mother. Family Promise assisted my mother with finding stable employment and permanent housing. Prior to that, my family experienced somewhat chronic housing instability while I was growing up. And before finding Family Promise, we had spent 12 long years staying with family members and friends in hotels without ever really having a place to call our own. My mom and I left Family Promise and with an apartment to move into. And since our time with the organization, neither of us have experienced housing insecurity. With continued support from Family Promise, I've also been able to attend the University of Minnesota and receive my bachelor's in human resource development and to create a better life for myself and my family. Family Promise has touched many lives in addition to my own, and the organization continues to grow and adapt in the ways that we assist families in Anoka County, particularly during the pandemic. Currently, Family Promise is working on developing a permanent static site home for our organization and shelter, which we would call our guest house. The guest house will help lower trauma for children and families experiencing housing insecurity in our community. And we are beyond excited about our guest house, but we also know that this is a big project and that getting the guest house up and running is going to take time and money. We are hoping to be able to work with our fellow community leaders and public officials on this project and to be able to access some of the public funding that may become available to make this mission possible. Through the pandemic, Family Promise has found new ways to help families in our community by expanding our programming to include push-in and stabilization services, which is helping to reduce the need for shelter space by keeping people out of shelters in the first place. These services save families from having to experience the stresses that come with staying in shelter. Family Promise is working hard to break the cycle of trauma for children experiencing housing insecurity. The experience of homelessness can create barriers to a safe and healthy life for children. And kids who have access to stable housing are more likely to be in stable situations as adults. So we hope that showing support and compassion towards these children and families will create a better future for our community as a whole. Finally, Family Promise provides a voice and platform to former families like mine who have experienced housing insecurity and successfully graduated the program. In addition to welcoming people with lived experience to join and participate on our board of directors, Family Promise also has a council of individuals who have successfully graduated the program. And the organization utilizes these individuals and their experiences to improve the program and create a better future, a better experience for future families. So I don't think I used my full 5 minutes, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about this awesome organization. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks so much, Teresa, and thank you for sharing your story and also staying involved and using your power and voice to make a difference in our community. We're going to turn it over to Margaret.
Good morning. My name is Margaret Metzdorf. I'm with Twin Cities Housing Development Corporation. We're a nonprofit that works in the metro area as well as expanded into southern Minnesota in the last few years. We are, as I said, a nonprofit housing developer and owner. We have third-party property management companies that oversee our properties. And we have one of our properties is in Anoka County, which is why Sue invited me to talk this morning. Northgate Woods is an asset that we purchased in 2010. And it is a 75 unit development in Blaine. It was on the edge of losing its Section 8 contract due to conditions. The owner had held it for 30 years and was kind of done with it and living remotely in Mexico. And so we were able to negotiate the purchase. We were able to take on, assume the remaining 10 years of the HAP contract. So this is a property that receives subsidy to help the families afford housing. And really, that's kind of what I want to speak to today, which is what do we do about housing folks that will always be rent challenged after shelter? So if the continuum of folks that we've been talking about on this panel are coming through shelter, what is the next step? And the next step is either getting them a project-based Section 8 unit so that as their income grows, they will contribute more towards the rent, but the federal government will offset that. And there's two ways: a voucher, which goes with the family, or a property that has the subsidy in the property. And so that's been our focus recently. Twin Cities Housing has been really looking at, we had a lot of properties in the in Minnesota that were coming up on their 30 years of their contracts expiring, and the owners were really just looking to sell and didn't really care what was the next step. Twin Cities Housing has been focusing on preserving these properties, and what we do is we use a vehicle with HUD's approval. It's called Markup to Market. And in addition, we use tax credits in many cases to provide funding, substantial funding for extensive renovations so that these properties are truly preserved both physically as well as financially for the next 30 years or beyond. That's really an important piece when we start looking at what are Section 8 properties and how they can continue to be that resource. The first project-based properties came on board in the 1970s, like the 73, 74, but there have been no new Section 8 contracts since 1983. So that means these resources are all either expiring or have expired, and many of them just become market rate properties with no subsidy for the residents. So what we do, we go in, we subsidize, we work very diligently for a couple of years to come up with the funds to be able to renovate the properties and restructure the finances. So I think, in short, that is my pitch today for the group: is what is beyond shelter? How do we provide for folks that will always be rent challenged? And not to say that people will always be, because certainly we see success stories, both what we've heard today as well as what we see on our properties, where we have residents that were using that Section 8 to stabilize not only education for their children, but also just for them to get to the next step in life. And we have people that actually move on directly from Section 8 properties to home ownership. And certainly in Northgate, we even have a city council member that's one of our residents. And that's kind of my pitch for today. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret, so much. And thank you to all the community members for sharing your story and your insights into the directions that we should be heading. And for our county commissioner representative, I'm going to share the screen again. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the public policy that MICAH is working on with Homes for All and with other groups. And thank you all. So MICAH has been working on a lead-safe home bill for the last few years to make sure that our homes are safe for our children. Currently, about 700 children are poisoned by lead each year, or more than 700. And it's primarily caused by the paint that we have in homes. So 1 out of every 3 homes, according to the Minnesota Department of Health, here in Minnesota, still has lead paint. Okay, that was banned in the late 70s, but we still have it in a lot of homes, and it has not been abated. And so we've been working on a bill with folks that have had their children that have been poisoned, including Janelle, who's on the call. Her children were poisoned, and some of our other board members. Janelle is a board member of MICAH, in really focusing on how can we reduce the number of children that are hurt for the rest of their life. Their brains are damaged for the rest of their life. Many of them become disabled. How can we prevent that from happening? And one of the ways to do that is to do more testing of the lead in homes, and then to encapsulate it by basically paying $2,000 per unit to basically paint over the lead, and that keeps it safe for another 5 years. This is such a critical piece of legislation. We appreciate Senator Abler in his support of this bill on the Senate side, Representative Fisher on the House side, as well as many other representatives and senators that have been supportive of this. It's been in the conference committee a few times already. We'd like to get it passed this year. And basically, it does incredible damage to the child for the rest of their life. Oftentimes, a lot of our kids that have had damage by the lead, their brains been damaged by the lead paint, have difficulties in school, as well as difficulties getting along in the community, and oftentimes end up in correctional facilities and end up homeless because they just don't understand how to work and maneuver around in our society. It also damages their family and just all the interactions and the costs there. And then it costs us as a community not to have that incredible creative young mind being all that God wanted them to be, as well as it costs us for each child that becomes disabled, $100,000 per child per year for the rest of their life in the different types of services that we will provide to them. So that we hope that you will support this bill as we continue to pursue it this next in this year. The Homes for All legislative agenda, before I talk about that, just want to add on a little bit to what Representative Connie Bernardy talked about, is that the rent help program, which was to help people that during COVID that were not working or could not work or needed to stay home to take care of kids because the schools were closed, they may have gotten behind on rent. That program ended last Friday at 9:00. So there are no dollars in the state rent help program. There are still some dollars in some of the county run rent help programs or emergency rental assistance. MICAH is calling on our legislature and our governor to add another $300 million from the American Rescue Plan dollars to either the rent help program and or to family homeless prevention, to our CAP agencies and our other emergency assistance programs. It's estimated that we still have about $250 million that are needed to prevent evictions here in Minnesota of folks that are behind on their rent. As Representative Bernardy also mentioned, is that the governor has $1 billion in for housing and homeless resources. And I won't repeat what she already said, which she did a great job of going over that. But we really believe that we need to be putting in $2 to $3 billion. It's not a surplus. These are dollars that we need to use to meet people's basic needs now. And we put in between $1 and $1.5 billion every year here at the state level for home ownership through a variety of ways. So it's really critical that we address the housing needs of our folks with the lowest incomes, especially people at or below 30% of median income. The Homes for All agenda, Mike has been a help to start the Homes for All coalition back in 2012, and we are major leaders on that. Janelle, who talked earlier, has been an active leader on that. Linda Soderstrom, who is also on this call, also on the MICAH board, is now one of the co-chairs of the Homes for All coalition. I'm very excited about that. And of course, All Parks Alliance for Change, that Natividad is the vice president. David Anderson, who's the executive director, is also one of the co-chairs. So we feel that we're very well represented there. I think we need to understand that while we looked at the numbers in Anoka County, as far as the number of households that are paying more than 30% of their income for housing, we have 500,000 households in Minnesota that are paying over 30% of their income for housing. And so we really have a lot of work to do to really make sure that we have housing, investing in housing that is affordable for all folks. And so you can see a variety of the policy priorities that we have here, from making sure, of course, our lead safe home bill making sure that people are not discriminated against with the different types of rent subsidies that they have, increasing our senior housing opportunities. As one of the part of the silver tsunami, I'm 68. I know that it's very difficult for people to move out of their single family home into rental property because the cost differential is just incredible. And we're not opening up our single family homes because people can't afford to move out of those homes into the rental property in the community. We need to increase the accessibility of the units, as was talked about earlier by Kayla, as well as in our shelters. Bring It Home campaign is a campaign that Beacon started, which would put $1 billion a year into rental assistance. And this would be really helpful in addition to the excellent program that we have through HUD, which is the Section 8 or the Housing Choice Voucher, and the Section 8 buildings also. Then as Representative Bernardy talked about, is really that we need to do a lot around evictions and expungement reforms, and then also making sure that we have rental assistance for folks that have mental health issues that are waiting to get onto Section 8, and folks that have struggled with rental histories and criminal histories, to have landlord risk mitigation to help people get into housing, even though they may not have the perfect record to get into housing. We need to build more homes and shelters, as we've been talking about, that is in the governor's budget, and really to target at housing that's affordable for people at 30% of median income and below. And then continue to preserve the homes, just as Margaret was talking about, is preserving those project-based Section 8, but also preserving all of those for-profit properties that we have in our community, which has owners that are ready to retire. And instead of them selling them to people from the East and West Coast or from other countries, is to sell them to people that are here in our community that will take care of them and provide affordable housing for folks, nonprofits as well as for-profits. And then to continue to expand our home ownership and wealth building for the diversity of folks in our community. As was mentioned, is that we have a great disparity in our home ownership between Caucasian and our diverse communities, and we need to bring that spread so that there's more equity within those opportunities to develop wealth. And as Natividad and Representative Bernardy talked about, manufactured home park opportunities are critical and an incredible way to provide affordable housing opportunities. So we hope that you will support us as we're moving forward on the Homes for All agenda. So we have a couple questions that we want to ask our state policymakers, and we're going to ask you if you're interested in providing, a couple minutes of your response. Will you support the lead safe home bills and the Homes for All agenda? And then how will you use the state surplus and American Rescue Plan funds to support Homes for All legislative priorities? And I'm going to ask if, Natividad, if you see a hand raised or you want to call on people, that would be great. And I think we had somebody that just joined us by phone, 612. If you could mute your phone, that would be great. I don't think we can do that on this side.
Are there any questions for our policymakers out there?
Or do we have any policymakers that would like to make a statement about how they would like to support this?
I would actually, Connie Bernardy. And thank you for asking this question. It's like, it feels like you're trying to close the deal, and that's the kind of advocacy. That's the kind of advocacy I like. That is a good thing, and I commend you for that. This is very important, and yes, I think of the Lead Safe Homes Bill and MICAH's role in that over the years, as well as Representative Karen Clark, who was on the forefront of this legislation. So yes, and then Home for All agenda, yes, and I just love how you talk about that it's not a state surplus. And that is really important to point out. And I am going to use that language as well. And part of, the state surplus is we don't count inflation. And so it really isn't all a state surplus. And when we have not been housing our residents or fully funding education or mental health services, it truly is not a surplus. So thank you for your leadership on that. And then I've talked with my colleagues at our caucus retreat that we had about let's be bold and let's do all we can to end homelessness in Minnesota. We have this unique opportunity to, kind of once in a generational time to be able to do the kind of investments needed to support everyone in our communities. And I believe that is ought to be our number one priority is to making sure that everybody has a place to call home. So thanks.
Thanks, Connie.
Sue, there was a question in there. If you could stop sharing your screen so that we could see each other.
And I think that
would that be okay?
Yep,
there we go.
Yep, we have another hand.
Yay! There we go. Is that State Representative Sandra? Did you have a question? Great, thank you.
General comment here. Well, okay, now I've got it on gallery view so I can see people. I just wanted to thank you so much for your advocacy and let you know that I wholeheartedly support your policy priorities. I have had a lot of emails lately from constituents saying that we should give the surplus back 100% just as a tax refund. And I respond to those emails and I say, you know, like a lot of us have it good and we are comfortable and safe and we have a home, but a lot of people in our community do not. And like in the introductory comments, just talking about how when we have a life of abundance, it is our obligation to then make sure that the people around us do it as well. And so I am just really looking forward to investing the surplus that in ensuring that everyone in our community can live a life of dignity and thrive. I thought that the presenter, trying to remember her name, talking about her experience getting stable housing and finding dignity and talking about, you know, hygiene and gardens and just, you know, everybody deserves to have like a wonderful life, like not just like the bare minimum, but like you said, a decent housing, not just like just a roof over your head, but a meaningful home to go to at the end of the day. So I just, you know, our housing budget last year was not big enough. And so I'm just really hoping that we can really focus on housing this year in our investments, as Representative Bernardy talked about in a lot more detail. There's a lot to do and there are a lot of plans to do it. So just really happy to be here this morning with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Janelle?
I just want people to remember that, like, people that's outside that's talking and saying, please find people that will work with people that is homeless and formerly homeless. Anything that you build, anything that you make, even housing people that in housing, that renting housing, find them that they can understand people that's homeless. Because one thing that homeless people, when you take people from outside the streets and put them in the house, don't respect them to respect the house real quick, because of the simple fact they need some kind of some kind of guidance, some kind of, you know, help. And sometimes they don't like asking for help because they don't know if you are here for them or you just here for a paycheck. Thank you.
Thanks, Janelle. And we're going to go and back to sharing the screen here for a minute, and we're going to ask the same question of our local policymakers. And then we just have a few more things to go through, and then we'll be done for today. Thank you. If any local policymaker would like to talk about how you plan to use local and American Rescue Plan funds, obviously we have funds available both at the county level, and many of the cities in Anoka County also received a direct allocation also. So wanted to give a chance if anybody wanted to answer that question. We have just a couple minutes for this.
Mandy?
Yeah, thank you, Natavi. Before I start talking, though, I just wanted to make sure that there is not any other city representatives on this call, since I already had an opportunity. I don't think that there is, but okay. Yeah, you know, and actually, I wanted to make a specific comment back to Pastor Christina Hill, because I really was listening to that. And so I'm going to be perfectly candid. You know, I am the commissioner. So as a board, we work together. It's majority consensus is how we set the policy, and that's a good thing. And I am always the commissioner that is pushing my colleagues to, you know, examine further, striving for excellence. I mean, we talk as a board about striving for excellence. And so I really push us to do so. The $2 million that we are allocating from our $69 million, I mean, 4.9 million in total is hardly anything. It is not enough funding. I personally think we should be investing more. That's unfortunately not in the powers that be for me, but I did want to acknowledge that because these problems that we're talking about, they're real and they need some serious investment on the front end, because the idea and the approach of waiting until we have a problem is not only expensive, and that's actually not the only lens that I use. It's an important one because it's not my money, it's taxpayer money. So I appreciate that, but it cannot be the only lens that we use. And at the end of the day, it's costing us way much more than money, right? We're talking about people's lives that could be very different if we were able to get them the services and the wraparound support that they need. And then I guess I'll just close too with, I think it was Janelle that made comment about having people at the table who've experienced this, and even Sue at the beginning of this call before we officially started. I really appreciate the fact that there are places at the table to listen to that, because that's absolutely true. I think one of the hardest things as I do just advocacy work in general around homelessness is talking to the public, because I think it's a really tricky thing. Not only the not in my own backyard type of issue, when let's pretend we did have the resources and the space for homeless shelter, then that's another challenge of getting the community to get behind that, the not in my own backyard type of thing. But then also it can be really difficult when you're in the field, as I just learned recently. Not everyone is either able to receive the help, or there is a huge trust factor. So that's something that doesn't necessarily compute with the general public. They think, well, we offer all these resources, we have a shelter, and nobody is using them. And it's just not it's not the complete story. And so I do want to thank you for bringing that to our attention. But as far as me personally, yes, I support all of these initiatives and issues that you've been talking about. I will continue, I promise, as a commissioner on a 7-member board, to be the voice at the table and keep asking the hard questions and bringing your voices there. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mandy. And I'm going to keep us moving along here because we're just about to the end of our time together. And thank you all for your comments on that. So we're going to ask each of you now just to take out your phone and maybe make one of the calls to these folks, asking them to support the Lead Safe Home bill. So if you want to call on that, Senator Draheim, who's the chair of the Housing Committee in the Senate, that's where we need to have a hearing. We already have a hearing set in Chair Hausman's committee. And then we'd like you to contact the majority leader and the Speaker of the House, and really asking them to invest dollars into affordable housing opportunities. So I'm just going to pause for a minute or two. If you want to grab your phone or email these folks, we'll also be posting this up on the MICAH website, which is www.micah.org. And then just want to just again thank everyone so much for being here. And we're going to just have a couple more slides after this, and we'll finish up in just a couple minutes.
Sue, as they take a picture, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
It's really important that people advocate for that opportunity to purchase. It is just common sense. And people, the residents who have been giving proposals oftentimes are more dollars than other people are giving, but they're not selling them to the resident and homeowners. And there's reasons for that. And the reasons are business driven and profit and greed in the long run. And well, that's my opinion. And so please advocate for opportunity to purchase, because we have a bipartisan group of people working together, but that is one that's a stumbling block, because I'm favoring residents and the other side, it seems, is favoring business for profit. So please call about that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Connie. And for
Thank
those
you
of
for
us,
always supporting that.
Yeah, for those of us that are homeowners, let's remember that we didn't ask if we could move into our neighborhood. So there should not be any, not in my backyard, because we have been able to move where we wanted to move. So let's love and treat other people the way that we'd want to be treated. So as we're coming to the close, faith in action, Frederick Douglass told us that power concedes nothing without a demand. So in addition to the great work that we're doing in meeting the immediate needs of people within our community, we must demand that our systems and organizations do what is needed to guarantee everyone without exception has a safe, decent, accessible, and affordable home. There's other opportunities that you can be involved with us. The Anoka County chapter for MICAH meets the second Thursday, so next week at 4:00 via Zoom. We also have more policy breakfasts coming up. So Janelle is coordinating with No More Streets and MICAH on a policy lunch that's happening on Monday, as well as we're having policy breakfasts in Dakota County and in Hennepin County over the next 2 weeks. Additional kickoffs that are happening with All Alliance Parks for Change on the 16th, Second Chance Day on the Hill, and Minnesota Coalition Homeless Day on the Hill and JROC Day on the Hill. So I encourage you to join us for those. Again, those will be up on the MICAH website also. And then we want to just thank all of you that are individual congregations and organizations, as well as all of our different groups that help fund MICAH for all the great support that you give us throughout the year. So we want to thank you all very much for joining us today, and appreciate all the great work that you all are doing.
It's been a pleasure seeing all of you. Thank you so very much for attending and sharing and hearing your stories. We're always so blessed. And I think about the time when I was homeless as a kid, living in a car with my parents and always struggling all my life. And still, sometimes it's a struggle anyway, no matter what you do. Health-wise, a car breaks down, whatever the case may be. You're all one paycheck away from being homeless. Always remember that. It does not make a difference who you are or how much money you make. So please always keep in mind that somewhere today, somebody is on the street, cold and hungry. And so we should be the ones to make sure that we're responsible for taking care of them as well. So have a blessed and wonderful day. And I thank you so much for attending. We'll see everyone soon. And thank you, opportunity to purchase Bell. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for your advocacy.
You're welcome.